The Marvel Cinematic Universe seemed unstoppable, a machine of billion-dollar stories and untouchable heroes. But behind the bright lights lies a truth Marvel rarely talks about. Its empire runs on control. For over a decade, the MCU's image was untouchable. Actors left sometimes, creative differences, they'd say, or scheduling conflicts. But getting fired from Marvel, that seemed impossible. Until December 2023, until Jonathan Majors. Jonathan Majors wasn't just another actor. He was the future of the multiverse saga. From Loki to Ant-Man, Quantumania, Marvel bet its next 6 years of stories, billions of dollars, on one man, Kang the Conqueror. He wasn't a side villain. He was the next Thanos, the new center of Marvel's grand plan. But when your universe is built on one actor, you're also building on one risk. And in December 2023, that risk exploded. On December 18, 2023, Jonathan Majors was found guilty of assault and harassment. Within hours, not days, hours, Marvel Studios released one sentence. Jonathan Majors will no longer be associated with future Marvel projects. That was it. No press tour, no waiting for appeals, no second chances, just gone. That one line ended a career meant to last a decade. And it didn't just remove an actor, it collapsed an entire story. The decision came down to a moral clause found in almost every big movie contract. It's Hollywood's legal kill switch. It lets studios cut ties if an actor's reputation threatens the brand. For Marvel, owned by Disney, this clause is everything. The company's family-friendly image is its money. The moment that image cracked, Majors was too toxic to keep. But Marvel's speed wasn't just panic. It was a message. This was about protecting the entire system. Inside Disney, a bad reputation spreads faster than any plot leak. A scandal tied to a major hero or villain doesn't just embarrass the studio, it can hurt its stock price. Majors' firing proved that no one was safe, and the fallout was massive. The multiverse saga lost its center. Scripts for Avengers, the Kang Dynasty, had to be rewritten from scratch. The movie was renamed Avengers Doomsday, and in a shocking move, Marvel announced Robert Downey Jr. would return, not as Iron Man, but as Doctor Doom. A complete overhaul of Marvel's 5-year plan. This wasn't just recasting, it was emergency surgery on the story. Majors' firing created a new kind of Marvel crisis. It was a reminder that the MCU's biggest threat isn't always on screen. His downfall also showed how fragile stardom is today. A single headline can erase years of work. Marvel's decision was fast, cold, and final, proving the brand will always outlive the person. Jonathan Majors was supposed to conquer the multiverse. Instead, he became its first casualty. But here's the thing. Majors' firing was loud, public, unavoidable. Sometimes, though, Marvel's firings are silent. If Jonathan Majors was a storm that struck the MCU from within, then James Franco was a ghost that never made it through the gates. Because sometimes in Hollywood, a firing doesn't happen after a scandal. It happens before the first camera rolls. Franco's fall began years earlier. By 2019, he was facing a lawsuit from former students at his acting school. They accused him of sexual misconduct and exploiting his power. In July 2021, he settled the case for $2.2 million. But the damage to his reputation was done, and Marvel noticed. Franco was in talks for Fox's Multiple Man movie, a mutant who could duplicate himself. But those talks never became a contract. When Disney bought Fox in 2019, every Fox project went through what insiders called a cleanup. Anything that was a risk to the brand was quietly shelved. And so, the Multiple Man movie vanished. Not canceled, not announced, just gone. But it didn't stop there. When Spider-Man: No Way Home came out in December 2021, fans noticed someone was missing. The movie brought back villains from decades of Spider-Man history. Green Goblin, Doc Ock, Sandman, Electro, Lizard. Yet Harry Osborn, Peter Parker's best friend, was nowhere to be found. Now, Harry died in Spider-Man 3, but so did several villains who appeared in No Way Home. The movie's premise was pulling characters from moments just before their deaths. Doc Ock was seconds away from drowning. Electro died in a power surge. Norman Osborn, Harry's father, died impaled by his own glider. The entire film was about saving people from the brink of death. Harry Osborn could have fit that story perfectly, but he was the only major character left out. This wasn't just a creative choice, it was caution. By 2021, Franco's reputation made him toxic. Marvel and Sony didn't just exclude him, they pretended that version of Harry never even mattered. It was a silent move. Erasure as risk management. No fight, no drama, just absence. This wasn't a normal firing. Franco didn't lose the roles. The roles lost him. Marvel didn't want to touch the controversy because of how it would look. Disney's brand couldn't afford a huge, messy public fight. So instead of damage control, Marvel chose prevention. It was a masterclass in quiet self-defense. This marked a turning point. The studio went from taking money risks to taking no moral risks at all. If the Majors firing showed how Marvel reacts to scandal, the Franco case showed how they prevent it. Disney understood that innocent until proven guilty doesn't apply to billion-dollar brands. When Seth Rogen, Franco's longtime friend and co-star, publicly said he wouldn't work with Franco again, it sent a clear message. Staying away from controversy is now a business strategy. So while the Majors firing shook the MCU from the inside, Franco's disappearance showed something deeper. Marvel wasn't just protecting its future, it was rewriting its past. A project lost, a character erased, and a studio that learned the most powerful move is silence. Majors and Franco showed how Marvel handles scandal. But sometimes the studio doesn't wait for controversy. Sometimes they just show you the door. Over money. And it started with the very first Avenger. Before the billion-dollar box office and endless Disney Plus shows, Marvel was just a risky startup. And in 2008, Iron Man changed the world. But that success came at a cost. The first cracks in Marvel's empire didn't start with a scandal. They started with a spreadsheet. Terrence Howard played Rhodey, Tony Stark's right-hand man. He was the first actor hired for the MCU, even before Robert Downey Jr. He took a pay cut on the first film to help Marvel afford RDJ, thinking it was a partnership, a bet on the future. He expected loyalty. But for Iron Man 2, Marvel had a problem. Robert Downey Jr. was now a megastar, and his paycheck exploded to a reported $10 million. Howard's salary suddenly cut, down to just $1 million. An 80% pay reduction. When Howard refused, Marvel didn't negotiate. They didn't try to compromise. They just replaced him. Don Cheadle, a great actor, took the job for Marvel's new price. The change was smooth on screen. Just one man swapped for another, and the machine kept moving. For Marvel, it was a win. For Terrence Howard, it was a betrayal. He later said he called Robert Downey Jr. over and over, the man he'd taken a pay cut to help cast, but RDJ never called back, not once. Howard claims that one decision cost him $100 million across the MCU's future. Marvel saw it differently. They were a new studio trying to save money. If replacing one actor saved millions, it wasn't personal. It was business, and that's what made it so cold. From that moment, Marvel set a rule. No one is irreplaceable. The character mattered, not the actor. And it wasn't just Howard. Hugo Weaving, who played Red Skull in Captain America, the first Avenger, had a 3-picture deal with Marvel. But when the studio asked him to return for Infinity War and Endgame, just for voice work on a CGI character, the pay was much less than the first film. Weaving called the negotiations impossible and walked away. Marvel didn't blink. They just hired another actor, Ross Marquand, to do the voice. The lesson was the same. Loyalty only goes one way. For actors, Marvel was a dream job, but for the studio, an actor was just a line on a budget, a replaceable part. Howard and Weaving's exits weren't dramatic. They were efficient. These moments showed the cold logic of Marvel's empire. It wasn't about talent, it was about control. Control over money, creativity, and image. If Howard and Weaving were about money, what came next was a war between art and authority. Edward Norton was never going to play by someone else's rules. When he signed on for The Incredible Hulk in 2008, Marvel didn't just get an actor. They got a writer who wanted to shape the story himself. Norton rewrote the script, demanded longer cuts, and wanted a darker, more psychological Hulk movie. But Marvel didn't want dark and deep. They wanted momentum. They were building a shared universe, and that system needed teamwork, not one person's vision. Norton's independence was a threat to that system. The real break came during promotion. Norton refused to promote The Incredible Hulk unless Marvel used his longer, darker cut. For a new studio trying to build a shared universe, that was unacceptable. You don't hold Marvel hostage. By the time the Avengers started pre-production, Norton was out. Mark Ruffalo was in. Marvel's public statement said they needed someone with a collaborative spirit. It sounded polite, but it was a warning. In the MCU, you can be talented, but you can't be difficult. Norton's firing was a message. Marvel wasn't a playground for visionary actors or directors. It was a machine, and everyone had to fit. Then there was Natalie Portman. Her rebellion was about loyalty. For Thor: The Dark World, Portman had fought hard to get Patty Jenkins hired as director. This would have made Jenkins the first woman to direct a Marvel film. But during pre-production, Marvel and Jenkins parted ways over creative differences. Before a single frame was shot, for Portman, it felt like betrayal. She'd pushed for a female director, and Marvel let her down. She was furious and reportedly tried to get out of her contract. Marvel wouldn't let her. She stayed for The Dark World, but fans said her performance felt checked out. After that movie, she vanished from the MCU for almost 10 years. Her absence wasn't about scheduling. It was a silent protest. She only agreed to come back years later for Thor: Love and Thunder when director Taika Waititi gave Jane Foster actual superpowers, the mighty Thor, and a heroic death. The story she deserved from the start. Between Norton and Portman, the lesson was clear. Actors with their own strong vision are dangerous. For the studio, control was worth more than creativity. The message was, we tell the story, you perform it. Marvel's universe was becoming bigger than its actors, and colder. Every firing, every replacement was just tuning up a system that was designed to never lose control. Because when art meets industry, one of them has to surrender. And at Marvel, it's never the industry. From moral scandals to salary wars, from artistic clashes to quiet erasures, every Marvel exit tells the same story. Not of chaos, but of control. Jonathan Majors showed that no one is too important to fire. James Franco proved that silence can erase entire characters. Terrence Howard showed that loyalty doesn't outweigh a budget. Hugo Weaving learned that even icons are replaceable. Edward Norton discovered that vision means nothing if it threatens the plan, and Natalie Portman reminded them that even silence can be a rebellion. Marvel evolved from a desperate startup into an empire. It treats its universe like a machine. If one piece breaks, another replaces it, smoothly, efficiently, coldly. The MCU is built on heroes, but it runs on contracts, legal clauses, and calculated replacements. It's not personal, it's just business. And maybe that's why Marvel's stories last, because the brand never bleeds, even when the people do. In the end, every actor who got fired from Marvel proved one truth. In this universe, the only real superpower is being too important to replace. But here's the darkest part. Marvel's next reset is coming. After Avengers: Secret Wars, rumors say the MCU will merge into one timeline, and not everyone's invited. Characters fans rejected, She-Hulk, Echo, the Eternals, might be quietly erased. It's the ultimate firing, written out of reality itself. So the question isn't just who gets fired next, it's who survives the reboot. Drop your prediction below. Which characters get erased when the multiverse collapses? And if this breakdown opened your eyes to how Hollywood really works, hit that like button. Because the next firing, it's already being planned.